Everyone, welcome to Inside Gaming. Today we're reviewing Team Sonic Racing, and as such, we have our resident Sonic scholar on hand.
Thank you
James.
very much.
James the Hedgehog is here
Thank
in the
you.
flesh.
I'm also resident Sonic Racing game scholar, too.
That's true. Now, yeah, it's good that you lean into that. So you were a huge fan of Sonic and All-Stars Racing Transformed.
Yes.
Tried to convince all of us to play it. And
I still stand by it being the best kart racer ever made. I stand by that. I will, just to preface this review and my perspective, I think it's dependent on what you want. I've talked about this a lot, but you can play apples to apples if you're funny and you want to do funny things with not funny elements, or you can play Cards Against Humanity, which is a game for not funny people to be funny. I feel like Mario Kart is the not good at racing game version of racing games, whereas some of these other kart racers, I may even throw Crash Bandicoot in. Some of these other are built on a platform of being a competitive racing game that also happens to be a fun kart-like style.
Interesting. Okay, well, good. Coming from that premise, we can start talking about Team Sonic because it isn't quite that. So let's just cover the mechanics here. It's called Team Sonic Racing because there are a lot of team mechanics. When you play, you're on a team of 3. If you're playing the adventure mode, it's pretty bound by like character association and Sonic lore. Online, it can be whatever, and actually we'll get into that mess in a minute. But it's kind of cool. They tried their best to make team mechanics bake more into the actual racing mechanics than maybe in another racer, and that manifests in a few ways. The most impactful, I think, is that the lead racer in your team leaves a giant trail behind them, and if you drive in that, basically you draft. You store up a boost, and then when you leave that trail, you get the boost, and then that also feeds a team ultimate meter that we'll talk more about in a second. But yeah, it took me a while to understand that boost is way more significant than something you get from drifting, which is more of a Mario Kart mechanic.
Oh yeah, absolutely. It's interesting because you do actually have to make decisions. With AI, I still think your goal is to just race as fast as possible and then pray that the AI keeps up with you and benefits. But if you're racing with other human players, there's a certain element of knowing that maybe it makes more sense to not drift around this turn to get a boost for yourself and take a straighter line so that way the people can follow you easier. Your teammates can follow you easier, and then they will literally pass you at the end of the turn, creating a chain of boosts that kind of follow each other.
Yeah.
And that ends up being faster than drifting yourself and kind of racing solo, which is something I don't think any other kart racing game has done.
Yeah, it creates a really cool leapfrog mechanic where if you're working in tandem with your other partners, you're always like drafting each other and jumping out in front, and hopefully that's cumulative. And yeah, what you're talking about with lines, you have to make some decisions about, okay, do I take a line through this turn to get all the rings, kind of like coins in Mario Kart? Do I go to the outside to get the rings, or do I stay on the inside for the shorter path? Yeah, that aspect works. There's some other things that don't work so well. I like the idea that so when a person gets hit with an item or something, they just stop dead on the track. If your partner zooms past you, they basically launch you back forward.
Yeah.
Cool idea, but it launches you in the direction you're facing, and there have been a lot of times where I wipe out right before a turn. AI dude gives me a high five, and I just launch right into the wall or off the track.
Yeah.
So it's good and bad. I guess in that situation, you would tell your partner, no, don't do it.
There are definitely some places where it makes sense. And I also have noticed that because this game still has the kind of if you're in that 9th place through 4th place scrum, it still just creates a complete shit show. And there are points where you'll get hit with an item, boosted right into another item, then boosted again, and it'll create a chain of death that keeps the swarm going. But you notice everyone in this scrum is also doing the same thing to each other because it's all so close quartered.
Yeah, if you can break away.
It's an interesting element, but it also keeps you trapped in that ranking there for a while unless you can do something to get out of that chain.
Yeah, so there was some attention paid to that, which I appreciate. Didn't quite execute on it as well as I would have liked. And another visitation of that is the 3 different kinds of racers. So you've got speed, technique, and power characters. Each has their own unique mechanic. Speed characters, and it kind of plays into their base stats too, but speed characters get a little they can erase projectiles coming at them with a boost. Technique characters can drive over dirt or grass without slowing down. And power characters can go through road hazards without slowing down. So there are road barriers or little crabs.
Robots and stuff.
Yeah, it's a neat idea that certain characters have fundamentally different abilities. And that could have been really cool if the track design laid into it really hard.
Yeah, especially the technique one is the one that I've noticed to be the least valuable because there's only a handful of tracks that have kind of weird layers, but they're also off the course anyway. So It's kind of like if you were in any other race car game and you drove onto the grass. In this game, if you're a technique character like Tails, you can maintain your maximum speed. But why would you want to be in the grass? That just means you're heading towards a wall anyway. So there's only a handful of sections where that yields to shorter pathing, which is really, really strange. On the opposite side of that, the power characters who can crash through obstacles literally have access to shortcuts. They can crash through something and now they have a shorter path to where they need to go. All that said, it still kind of boils down to, since they think this is a speed-based, skill-based racer more than a Mario Kart party racer, you still want to be the fastest kart out there. You want to be the best driver and the fastest kart. So I really haven't seen a situation where it behooves you to pick anything other than Sonic, and I'm not just saying that.
Yeah, you're right. The last big kind of base team mechanic is the ultimate. Mm-hmm. So when you're doing team actions, when you're you can trade item boxes to your teammates and stuff like that. When you're drafting your teammates, it fills a meter, and then once you activate it, it's kind of like the star in Mario Kart. Everyone drives super fast. You can use it to get over like obstacles and stuff that you may not be able to based on your track type or your racer type. But it's an interesting mechanic, and it certainly encourages team play. Mm-hmm. But it really comes down, it's kind of like Ultimates in Overwatch. It's when you hit the trigger, and it's not really more nuanced than that. If you really lean into the team mechanic, I haven't seen it make the difference between like 2 or 3 in a race. It just seems like you're going to get however many you're going to get, despite how much team play you actually do. Yeah. It might make the difference between 1 or 2, which, depending on when you use it, could make the difference of a few rankings. But if you're playing with humans, they're going to be doing the same thing. So it seems like it negates itself in a kind of weird way.
It seems like it was a last-minute add to the features list. I like it, but I bet when they were playtesting the game, they saw that there was not that much incentive other than, like, there is the helping each other aspect, but there's also like the item sharing and stuff. Mm-hmm. That's like a roll of the dice in most cases. You get a rocket and then you're like, here you go, and then you offer up a rocket, but it might go to Lawrence, who might be able to use it effectively, but it also might go to someone else who, like, or another AI character you can't even control who takes it then, who's not gonna use it, they're gonna toss it and it's not gonna be anything. But since you get points that go into an ultimate meter, which fill up, it does encourage me while I'm racing to basically, if I'm in the lead, I'm just gonna pass everything back. Mm-hmm. I just send everything back because it also, if there is a chance that it hits someone and causes more of a mess behind me, then I get further ahead. But it also means that I fill up my meter more and more and more and more.
Absolutely.
And also, we talked about it the other day, you can just keep passing.
Oh, really? Just
yeah,
forever?
I was sent an item and it was a powered up item and I was like, send it back. And I just kept sending it back and then I would just keep sending things back until they used it.
Okay.
They never used anything.
Wow.
So that does seem like there's a certain item generation aspect of the game if you're willing to sacrifice those opportunities.
Okay. There is some nuance there. If you pass an item, sometimes it gets upgraded based on the type that you are. So if you're power, it might get upgraded to a boost. If your technique, I think it might get upgraded to like triple rockets instead of normal rockets. So they tried, is what I appreciate.
There's also certain items aren't even accessible to certain characters.
That's
so
right,
I think the power character, like the Knuckles type, has access to more items than the other characters do.
Okay.
So if Sonic wants to
balance it out.
get like a ghost or a vacuum, or I think it's called Void Wisp or whatever, if he wants to get one, he can only get it by being passed from a Knuckles.
There's rings in the game, they work like coins, with the distinction of whenever you get hit, you lose them all. Yeah, it's Sonic, but there seems to be such a wide gulf between, kind of like you said, it only seems to encourage the breakout mechanic, where if you're in the lead with 200 rings, you're gonna be flying, and then the people who are just beating the shit out of each other can never bank up, and it increases your top speed, kind of like coins do. So I have yet to figure out how that works, because it does seem to just encourage breakaways.
Well, going back to Sonic and All-Stars Racing Transformed, I do feel like this is more of a skill racer. As silly as it sounds, because it has the aesthetic of a children's game, but building off of that platform, it feels more like a skill racer. So if someone is breaking out, it's because they are the best racer in the pack, not because they got 3 red shells at the beginning. And then even in the item distribution, instead of having a blue shell, which is just something you can toss and then screw whoever's in first place and it has no effect on you, instead of that, they have a more diverse item, which is a lot like, again, Racing Transform, but pillars of rocks appear in the front of the track.
Is that Quake?
Yeah, and so basically it makes the track more complex for the people that are in front. And then as they slowly hit more and more pillars, by the time you reach it in 7th place, you're gonna have a pretty clear path, but those in front now had a more challenging race. Again, kind of leads into the skill-based aspect of it. I don't know. I don't blame the game that much.
Okay.
Because I get so frustrated when I'm getting killed in Mario Kart again and again and again, and someone who I know isn't better than me is winning.
That makes sense. Well, man, speaking of getting killed again and again and again, the single-player adventure mode I actually really enjoyed because it has a variety of challenges. I specifically liked the ring challenge and traffic. So ring challenges, they're basically distributions of strings of rings around the track. It's kind of meant to teach you racing line and stuff like that, but you have to collect as many rings as possible, and if you drift through rings, it'll add time back to your meter. So it's all about mastering the arc of your drifts around turns and stuff like that. It's pretty good. I always appreciate things that are challenging, but also teach you the skills to get better. Traffic is another example. There are these gates you drive through to get time, but then also these robots who are like sweeping back and forth across the track. You have to dodge around those, but go through the gates at the same time. Again, it's teaching you to be accurate while you're drifting and to learn the specific handling of your car. But goddamn, so each of those challenges are graduated by how many rings you get or how many traffic gates you pass through. It is really difficult to like hit because it's like medals. Platinum is, oh my god. I got gold a couple times, and that was on runs where I couldn't really think about how I could have been better.
Yeah, near perfect, like basically perfection.
Yeah, so I need to look up some YouTube videos of people getting platinum because I don't know what that looks like.
Those because those are also something that have been in the Sonic Racing franchise, which are these other ways to play the game, which I think is really cool. But man, they are rough, and they'll generally take place on other tracks. And it's weird when you can't even get around one lap before it's like your time is up.
Yeah. Personally, I think that's probably the greatest virtue of this game is that it does have that core single-player, unapologetic challenge, at least in the single-player mode, if you want to go after it. But it's a kart racer, so a lot of people come to think of those as multiplayer games, so let's talk about that a little bit. It's there. Man, I tried doing some matchmaking last night, and there was nobody playing, or the matchmaking's broken. I did get in a couple of matches with like 2 other people, but it's strange since it's a team racer, and this is something we kind of struggle with.
Yeah.
You'd think you could put together a group of 3 people, take that group online and race with them as a team, but it doesn't seem to be that way.
In our testing, it would appear that you cannot.
Yeah, and in my experience, it also appears that you cannot. You go online with a group of people, and if you do team race, it's just like, cool, go race. And it just sort of scatters you across all the teams, which means your friends may be playing with enemies or on AI teams because it fills out the races. It's a strange decision, and all I can figure is if it's intentional, maybe they don't want a group of 3 just elite racers going around and bashing everyone. Because I could see that to a degree. If you're really good at it, you know all the tracks and you know the mechanics, you could just pound everyone into the dirt. So maybe this is their forced way of team sharing.
But they do have a ranked and casual division.
They do.
So like, I mean, if you want to do that and race against those guys that are just the baddest ass shadows, it's a team of 3 shadows, and they're just always tearing it up. Like, I mean, I feel like you should be allowed to try that in ranked, and if you don't want to, then you go into casual and you just kind of race with your friends.
Yeah. So I don't know. Maybe there's something weird about it that I wasn't understanding, or some menu I should have gone through but if that's the case, I don't know, man. I feel like I'm pretty good at figuring out game menus. It should have been fairly obvious about how to play with your friends, and it wasn't.
Yeah.
So either it's not in the game, or it's really hard to figure out, and I'm not sure which one to lean on right now. Also, I was playing on PS4, and there just wasn't anyone playing online, which is probably the worst problem. Well, let's talk about some of the more technical aspects of the game, the graphics. I actually really like the way it looks. You mentioned it's like a kid's game. It's got that Sonic aesthetic. It's bright, colorful, and cheery.
Absolutely.
Functionally, I really appreciate that way on down the track, rings and item boxes get a little halo around them. Makes them very easy to see, which is appreciated because rings can kind of blend in sometimes. Turns are very easy to see. They always have giant vertical boards with arrows telling you which way the track's going to go. For the most part, there are some tracks that get a little visually confused, and some turns just kind of come up out of nowhere, but, you know, I'm willing to accept that as part of just learning the game.
Yeah, if you're playing without split screen, if you're playing split screen, things become a little bit more complex. You have to basically sit right in front of your little cube to see where that next turn is coming from. But for as much as going on in these worlds, you're going up on the walls, you're going upside down, there's wisps and Sonic references that you don't even recognize, even though you're a huge fan, just flying across everywhere. You always know where the track is.
That's
true.
And
I feel like that's impressive. Also, just in terms of design, like it feels like a roller coaster. If you're gonna do a cartoonish game like this, I want to go up walls, I want to go down straight, I want to do flips, I want to do stuff, and it feels very fun and very tight.
Yeah, and as the difficulty goes up, it's kind of like Mario Kart. It just gets faster, And man, when you get above hard and even expert, some of those tracks they go so fast that you kind of have to know the turns before they even get there and start like pre-drifting to get through them without bashing off the walls and stuff. So I appreciate that. Counterpart to that is I did get a lot of slowdown on PS4.
Oh, yeah?
This is base PS4. So that's fair, that console's getting old, but in a game like this, boy, if it starts dropping frames, it's real bad.
Yeah.
There were some times where I was doing like ring challenge, trying to get those medals, and I could start to know which turns would kill it too, because when a lot of rings would swing on screen, it would just chunk. Oof. And yeah, when you have to do a lot of micro adjustments when you're drifting through a turn, it actually messed me up a couple times. Moving on, the sound. Sonic, always good with the sound.
Yeah.
And I feel like the soundtrack here is great. A lot of references to other Sonic stuff, a lot of references to other Sonic racing games, with some Sonic R remixes in there. I have really no complaints about the soundtrack.
There's a song that plays over every single loading screen, which is like, I guess, the Team Sonic Racing theme. And it starts with this kind of like piano solo thing. And every single time I'm like, it's about to hit, and then the game loads in, and I'm like, shit. Like, I have to pull up a YouTube video of that song playing, and it's all very cheesy Sonic music, but man, something about it.
It's happy. Found some glitches though, again, base PS4. But there were times where sound effects just wouldn't play. I'd pick up some rings. I'd like pick up a whole string of rings, and it just wouldn't play the little ringy sound effect, which is wonderful. But like it wouldn't play at all, and then at the end just go one ding, and I'd be like, oh, well, that was weird. So yeah, sometimes when the audio landscape gets too complicated, it starts dropping sound effects. Maybe on purpose, because it doesn't want to confuse me with too much going on, but it kind of felt like it was just the PS4 getting overworked.
Well, in terms of layers of sound, there's the stage song, there's the sound of the actual race cars, there's every sound effect like the coins and everything that you interact with in the world, and then there's also dialogue that happens during the course of a race between you and your teammates and the other enemies. Like Knuckles is just telling you, he's like, you could use an item here, and then you press a button, and then Sonic goes, sending something your way. Like, it's just layers and layers of sound.
And the voice acting is, it's Sonic, so it's like a good for kids dub is kind of where I'd put it, but some of the writing is, it's Sonic again. But there's stuff like, you'll run into something and Tails will be like, that'll teach you not to text and drive. That is a weird reference to be in Sonic Verse, but whatever, man. Anything goes. I'm cool with it. It's just sometimes an eyebrow will raise.
I feel like we should mention too, the Team Adventure mode has an entire story that goes along with it, with this new character called Donpa, who has brought them in to race, weird motives or whatever. But you never have to see a single sequence of it because you can just press a button and it'll skip all the cutscenes for the rest of the whole game.
Yeah, they make X the start without story button. So I was like hitting that without even realizing I was skipping the story. So in a weird way, the game sort of thinks that no story is default. So once I learned that, no, I was hitting square and getting all that good story for myself. But it is just fluff dialogue between the characters who they throw out references to past Sonic games, and that's just about it. Moving on to the controls, I actually, controls-wise, didn't really have any problems with the game.
Yep, it's definitely the game that I loved.
Yeah?
Just kind of turning, controlling. It feels a little bit slower. Like it feels like maybe they slowed the speed down of the game just by like 15%. But man, drifting in and out of drifts and knowing exactly kind of where your lines are. The tracks seem just the right width for the control that you have over every car. It feels really good to play.
Yeah,
honestly.
I agree. I feel like the control you have while you're drifting is pretty spot on. It gives you enough control to do what you want to do. It doesn't give you so much that you can do whatever you want. So yeah, I feel like it hits a sweet spot of giving you the control to express skill properly.
The only caveat to that is I think the controls inherently are so good in the game that there's a whole mod system. You can basically mod your character's cart.
Oh yeah.
With different front ends, different back ends, different wheels. It changes the design of the cart, but it also changes its stats, like its acceleration, its drift, and its handling and stuff like that. I don't notice any of the differences.
All right, final thoughts here. I enjoy it. I had fun enough with it. The single player, honestly, is where most of the meat was for me. I appreciated the variety they put into the challenges they put there. I appreciate the ridiculously high challenge that they pose to you. But I ultimately feel like it missed a lot of potential with the team mechanics. I feel like there was a lot of potential there that should have been realized in the track design, but wasn't quite. Maybe you have branching paths where like Tails can blaze forward his technique and lay down a path through grass, and like even communicate ahead of time. Like, okay, we got the shortcut coming up. Let's let Tails in the lead, lay him down a path through grass so everyone else can follow through. And then we got to have Knuckles in the lead to bash through this this gate so everyone can drive through. That doesn't really happen. It's mostly like one gate into a ramp, into a boost, and that's it. So you get one boost. Cool, but that's about it.
Yeah.
You were mentioning that Sonic and All-Stars Racing Transformed tracks were a lot more technical.
Yeah, well, that whole aspect of your vehicle transforming, so it goes from a race on water to a race on land to a race in the air, like ever changing. It feels like there's always these new techniques. So you could be really good at the water section, but then you'll have to make up time on the water section because the other karts are better than you in the driving section.
Okay.
And those are fun elements. Obviously, it's just you alone. There's no team element to that game, but it would have been nice to see that integrated in some way. Since now you do have characters with specific skill sets, it's weird that they're all racing under the same conditions.
That makes a lot of sense, yeah.
So,
by your experience, would you say that Team Sonic Racing doesn't quite carry over the same nuance or the same depth of strategy, even though there is that team aspect?
It does seem like the game is a step back in terms of racing strategy and skill. Which is a shame because I don't know any other game that has this team racing element.
It's a neat idea.
Even like Forza's, like you would like to see a team racing game somewhere. Like that is kind of what a lot of racing is team based.
Yeah, I guess like Grid gets somewhat close. You basically own like a racing franchise and you hire drivers to race with you.
Yeah.
And then your team gets ranking points that is all cumulative. So sorta, but you know, obviously in Grid it's not an arcade racer, so all this like boosting stuff doesn't factor in.
But like what you're saying, like blazing trails using your character's skill sets to make it easier for the other characters who have those as weaknesses built into the track is a really fun element that should have been integrated maybe a little bit better into this.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like there's a lot of potential there. I feel like most of the potential wasn't realized, but maybe DLC tracks or a sequel could really hit that stuff. I do think that they have a really good base in terms of mechanics and just a really solid, fun racer. I don't know about this multiplayer aspect, but if you like a good single-player experience and you're into Sonic, that's a good cross-section to recommend this game. But man, apart from that, you might want to wait for a sale or something like that.
If you weren't waiting for it, you probably shouldn't run out and get it. But if you were, you will probably not be disappointed either. I think you'll enjoy that it is the kart racer franchise that you're familiar with a new twist.
Well said. All right. Well, thank you, James.
Thank you.
Thank you for always sharing your Sonic knowledge and lore with me. I have a lot of homework to do.
Can't help it.
And thank you for watching. I hope you appreciated it. And we'll see you next time on Inside Gaming. Sonic the Hedgehog. What a roller coaster that series has been on. Since 1991, Sonic has rivaled Mario in popularity, seemingly been on the verge of oblivion, and every status in between. But after everything Sonic's been through, someone's got to ask,